Good morning. I'd like to read our scripture this morning, first of all. It's from John chapter 10. I'll read verses 10 through 16. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and might have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hireling and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, beholds the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hireling and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, that they shall hear my voice, and they shall become one flock with one shepherd. Well, our speaker this morning is Alan Phillips. And I think it's no secret that Alan is Scottish. You may have noticed that. However, Alan came to us from Newcastle, England. Actually, he hasn't lived in Scotland for many years. Yet, still quite obvious when you hear him speak that he's from Scotland. But if you ever hear him get excited and kind of talk at the same time, then it's like, who knows where he's from, because you can't understand anything he says. Even Nikki can't. Well, anyway. Alan and his family have lived out at New Home in the house provided by the church there over the past 2 years, and he has preached regularly. And he has taught class over the last 2 years. And just the other day, there was a lady at the church there, and she was speaking to me, and she said, I love Alan, but I only understand about half of what he says. And that was Nikki. So, Anyway, as a church, not knowing them, we were a little bit anxious about, a little nervous, I guess, when we decided to invite them to use the house and spend the next 2 years with us, because we were thinking, what if we didn't like them? Or what if they didn't like us? Or what if it just didn't fit? Well, it didn't take long for us to breathe a sigh of relief, and I have to say that this family has really endeared themselves to the brothers and sisters at New Home. They are family. And they have served well. And it has been a joy to see them grow and give themselves to the Lord. Among other things, they headed up and pulled off one of the best vacation Bible schools we have ever had. So we're really going to miss Charlotte and Nikki. Yeah. We do want to thank Bruce. Bruce is over here, and Alan's going to introduce some of his friends in a minute. We want to thank Bruce Smith. Bruce is one of our graduates, and he's here to support and hear Alan this morning. We want to thank him and Nikki for encouraging Alan to come our way. And we want to thank Charlotte for keeping her dad in line while they have been here. She is constantly reminding him of who he is, what he's about, and the fact that there's no way he'll live to be 100 years old. Yeah. Listed among joys while here, the spiritual growth of the family, especially Charlotte, and the depth of knowledge they've received while here. Their challenges, as many of you know, have mostly been medical. It seems that this West Texas climate just doesn't work well for them. It doesn't agree. And so they've had various health issues since they have arrived. And I need to say this. By the way, I just need to say, before coming to Sunset, Alan was in the Royal Air Force. Now, hopefully you'll follow this. He was in the Royal Air Force before he was made redundant. Yes, he was mothballed. He got the T-shirt, been there, done that. And when he was made redundant, the penny dropped. And he was tempted to tar life with the same brush. But he decided to come to SIBI and learn some Bible verses. So they took many of the things and threw them into the skip and made their way to Lubbock, Texas. Now, that's just a few words from Alan's vocabulary. So now do you understand why people out at New Home do not have a clue what he's been saying over the last 2 years? Yeah. Did I mention he was Scottish, And I'm not going to say anything about the reputation of the Scots this morning. But I will tell you this. Alan showed up at Bible class on Sunday morning out at New Home with a new coffee mug, one of those plastic coffee mugs. And it was a Longhorn coffee mug. So I told him, I said, I knew he didn't have a clue what he had done. So I told him, I said, you can't take that to Sunset. You can't parade a Longhorns cup around in Lubbock, Texas. I mean, this is Texas Tech territory. So true to a Scotsman. This is a true revelation. This is an unveiling. Classmates, for a year and a half, did he go buy a new cup? No. For a year and a half, he fooled you guys. He got duct tape and duct taped over the Longhorn cup and carried it around for a year and a half. Alan has been a great student, a good friend. And his experience and his skill was recognized by his fellow classmates, and he has served as the class chairman for the last year. He is a wonderful husband, a great dad who loves his girls, and he has given himself to the study of God's Word, and he studied diligently so he and his family can move back to Glenrothes, Scotland, and carry on the work there began by Alex Strachan. They'll also work with the churches in Cumbernauld, Falkirk, and Stirling, especially in the revival that's going on among the youth. So, in what seems to be the twinkling of an eye, 2 years have passed, and it's time for us to encourage Alan to come and preach the Word.
I didn't expect anything less. Thank you, Victor. I've got my family here with me. My beautiful wife, we'll have been married 15 years in June. And of course, our princess, I shouldn't look at her. Charlotte Rebecca. And I believe there's some people from the UK watching in this morning. Although they're 6 hours ahead. I'll be home soon, don't worry. Special thank you to faculty who have put up with me for 2 years, even though you haven't understood a word I've said. And not only do I talk with a Scottish accent, I obviously write with a Scottish accent by the amount of red ink that came back in my papers. But it's sometimes been a compliment, and it's sometimes been embarrassing when people have talked about my accent. And when you've got people like Pat Schaefer and Kevin Haynes telling me that what a wonderful accent you've got, Alan. So much so you could read the phone book and it would sound wonderful. So for my senior sermon, if you don't mind, I thought I would just read the phone book to you. Victor read out the passage in John 10. And it talks here about the Good Shepherd. And we all know that the Good Shepherd is Jesus himself. And that theme of the Good Shepherd and the sheep goes all the way through Scripture. Sheep are the most talked about animal in the whole of the Bible. And yet people say, and they've said to me, this is out of date. It was written 2,000 years ago. And sheep and shepherd are not relevant. Well, my answer to that is, have you checked the label on your carpet recently and seen how much wool is in there? But sheep are not relevant. What about the clothes you wear? Have you checked how much wool content is in that? But sheep are not relevant. And if you're like me, if you're a meat eater, don't you just enjoy lamb? I love lamb chops. I love a piece of lamb infused with garlic and herbs and roasted slowly, served up with potatoes and vegetables. But it's not relevant. Don't tell that to the people of New Zealand, Australia, Scotland, or Wales, whose economy relies very much on sheep. So let's just throw it out of the picture. But what do we do if we do that? We could open the floodgates. And where do you stop? The very words that Truett used to me a few weeks ago, I was in his office, we were talking about graduation. And he says, if I give in to your request, Alan, we could open the floodgates. And where do we stop? Where does it finish? When was the last time you witnessed a crucifixion or a resurrection? Let's just throw that one out as well then. But what does that do to 1 Corinthians 11? When in the night that Jesus was betrayed, he was in the upper room with the 12. And he instituted the Lord's Supper. You see, without the crucifixion, without the resurrection, the Lord's Supper's a waste of time. So let's throw that one out as well. When was the last time you witnessed a miracle? Or you had a vision directly from God? Or when was the last time you saw Jesus in the flesh? Let's throw that one out. What are we left with? Nothing. We may as well throw that in the bin. Oh, by the way, I'm practicing for going back to Scotland. You would say throw it in the trash. But if I go back to Scotland and I use words like trash, awesome, and you all, they'll say, you need therapy. You've been over there too long. But you can see how ridiculous and how stupid it is. And you're probably thinking, that could never happen. Oh, yes, it could. You see, Satan won't hit you with a piece of 4x2. He just chips away at it. And you don't even notice. And you don't even notice until it's too late. In Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9, Solomon says there is nothing new under the sun. And how true that is. In the Bible, they moved things by animals or sheep or cats. What do we do today? Well, we've got ships if it's on water, obviously, but we've got trains and planes and cars and things. Is that any different to then? No, it's transportation. In those days, in the Bible, when they wanted to send a message, it's usually done by word of mouth or letter. What have we got today? Touch of a button. We've got Skype. We've got video conferencing. Is it any different to then? No, it's still communication. You see, we have to make it relevant. And as preachers and teachers, that's our job, to make this relevant to today so that people can understand. And I've had some people say to me, I'm not a teacher. Yes, you are. The minute you open your baby blues in the morning, you're teaching. You have an influence on everyone you come into contact with. By the way you speak, by the way you act. So we're all teachers, and we're commanded to be teachers. Imagine for a moment that your life is in a box. And in this box you have your family life, your social life, your work life, your hobby life. Everything is in there. And everything in this, because of your makeup and your DNA, the way you think and the way you act is the same for everything in that box. But some people have another box. And this box is for Sunday and a Wednesday. And I'll be honest, coming here, I had 2 boxes. And the thing is, if you look at things in this other box, it's totally different to the main one of your life. If you read a book, or you watch a television program, or go to a movie, if you're like me, you immerse yourself in the story. You become part of it. But as James reminded us on Wednesday, for some people, this is just a book. This is just words. Just black and white. And it'll be like that if you've got 2 separate boxes. And we've been taught in class by people like Ray Young and others to immerse ourselves in the stories. He'll stop and he'll say to you, what can you hear? What can you see? What can you smell? What can you taste? And if you do that, that goes from being black and white to technicolor. In Ron's class, we're doing Timothy and Titus. And at the end of 1 Timothy chapter 2, towards the end, it talks about women being submissive. And that's been a bone of contention over the years. If you have two boxes. If you have one box, there isn't a challenge. We're all submissive. You're submissive to me at the moment. As students, we are submissive to the faculty. In your job, you could be submissive to a manager, a supervisor, or a boss. And when it's in a big box, we don't have a problem with that. And if that is in here, you won't have a problem with this. If you join a club or an association, you usually have to read the rules and regulations, and you agree by them. And you pay your dues, and you become a member of the club or the association. But also in there, there's usually, if you break the rules, there's usually some form of discipline. If the discipline goes far enough, you can end up out of the club or the association. I've got news for you. This is no different. This is a rule book. And before we go into the waters of baptism, we agree to abide by this. So just like in a club and an association, obviously we don't pay fees to become members of the church. Our fees are our waters of baptism. But just like clubs and association, you break the rules, there's discipline. That discipline could go far enough. It's all right, I'm 60, I'm allowed to do that. I can do a Gerald, I'm over 60 now, so I'm okay. I can lose the words and I can lose my place. It could go far enough that you could be thrown out the club, and you and I know what that means. That's the difference between heaven and hell. I've spoken to some people about baptism. And it concerns me that some people are just so focused on baptism. Got to get them into the waters of baptism. Nothing wrong with that. Got to get them into the waters of baptism. But they forget the rest. You see, baptism's not the end of the journey. Baptism is the start. It's the beginning of a Christian walk, or it should be. And I'll say to people that, and they say, well, let's just get them in. And then we'll tell them everything else afterwards. That is wrong. So wrong. You can't do that. And I think I know where it's coming from in our society today. I don't know about the US, but in the UK, we have got to be so careful that we are politically correct with everything we do and say. Let's stop being politically correct and let's be godly correct, for goodness sake. In Acts 2, 3,000 were baptized. And it says in Acts 2:42 that then they continually devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. And we sometimes just read over that. We sometimes just skip through it. But there are two words in there that are so important. Continually devoting. Continually devoting means it goes on and on and on. Not until you get fed up. Not until you decide you're going to retire. Until He calls you home. Can we continually devote ourselves to the apostles' teaching? Yes, it's all in here. Have you ever watched a bricklayer at work? Bricklayers will put down a row of bricks, and you'll see a piece of string along there with two pegs in the end. Then they'll put down the next row of bricks. And then they'll check them vertically, using a spirit level, vertically and horizontally. And then they'll move that string up to the next line and do the same all the way until the wall is finished. You see, That's their standard. And they always check constantly against the standard. This is our standard. We need to check constantly against this standard. And if we do that, Satan won't get a foothold. I'm just watching my time here. But it's Friday, so if I go over time, just stack the chairs. I'll put the lights out in the way home. Sorry, Charles, he's gone. There are 2 films out at the moment. Son of Man and Noah. But the Bible's irrelevant. Doesn't apply today, and yet they're breaking box office records. But some people are getting upset by it. Some people are getting wound up saying, it's not true to the book. It's blasphemy. It's this, that, and the next thing. It's the most fantastic evangelistic tool that we've got at the moment being given to us. Didn't God use situations through and through for the better good? Use that one. When people come to you and they say, have you seen the film? Yeah. And you say, what do you think of it? Well, it's a good film, but like most films, it's not true to the book. Really? So where's the difference? They've opened the door, go in! Sorry, sweetheart, my daughter's holding her ears here, I'm shouting too much. Go in! It's an opportunity, a wonderful, fantastic opportunity. And people say it's not true to the book. When have you ever read a book and watched a film? Have you ever watched a film that's been true to the book? I've never done it. So it's no surprise that this is any different. So don't get upset about it. Use it for what it is. God and Jesus showed us by example how to use the tools of the trade. I put my foot in it a couple of weeks ago at New Home. Out there I'm busy teaching on the life of Christ. I'm preaching on the life of Christ. And I was explaining this, how Jesus uses things. He made it relevant to the time. Did Jesus speak to everyone the same? No, he didn't. The woman at the well, did he speak to her the same way as he spoke to the tax collector? Or the same way as he spoke to the Pharisees? No, he didn't. And he used, to make things relevant, he used everything round about him. He used nature, he used animals, he used seeds, he used coins, he used lamps. We have to make it relevant today. The other thing I told people at New Home was, he uses questions very well. And when people ask a question, he usually answers with a question. And that's to get people to work things out for themselves. That's to get people to get an understanding for themselves. But when I ask Nikki a question and she answers me with a question, I say, stop being a politician, just answer me directly. I'll ask her, do you love me, darling? And I'll get 3 questions. Why? What do you want? Or what have you done? So I can't do that anymore. If I say to her, she'll just say, I'm just following Jesus, so I've stitched myself up. So you have to be very, very careful. In conclusion, don't have 2 boxes, have the one. Make your Christian life part of your makeup. Make your Christian life part of your DNA. It's supposed to be there 24/7. That doesn't mean a Bible under one arm and a prayer mat under the other. It's the way you look at life. It's the way you think. It's the way you see things. It's your sense of humor. It's the way you serve people, the way you act. Make it part of your life. Make it relevant to the people, the lives that you touch. Don't be politically correct. Let's be godly correct. Is the Bible relevant today? Oh, yes. More than it's ever been before. God bless all of you.